Hello. Good morning, good afternoon. I am so happy you're here. Whatever brought you here, I am happy that you are here. My name is Tansy McNulty. I am the founder and CEO of 1M4, and 1M4 stands for 1 Million Madly Motivated Moms. And what we are is a collective of Black women, Black maternal figures, whether that's we've given birth to children biologically, or we're the godmommy, auntie to someone under the age of 18 that we have responsibility for. And our goal as an organization is to end police violence by the year 2038. So hearing that, you're probably like, what am I doing? What are we talking about Black women and suicidal ideations for when you focus on police violence? Well, a couple reasons. The biggest reasons, because back in 2020, as an organization, we had all this going on with the pandemic, the uprisings, and while we're working on police violence prevention efforts, I noticed a heaviness in our conversations amidst ourselves. And I've been wanting to do this type of program for a few years now, and more intently the last 18 months. So I'm noticing a shift in our conversation. So we're going to address it. So before we get started with anything, with any of our sister check-ins, I want you to take a deep cleansing breath in through your nose, out through your mouth. Audible if you can. If you're in the office, try to keep it quiet. But if you're at home, and I want you to relax your shoulders, relax your face. As Black women, sometimes we hold stress kind of right here and right here. Unclench your jaws, relax your face. I just want you to be present in this moment, present in your body, and know that we see you. Like we're not, I can't physically see you, but we see you as the person that you are, and we value your life. And I'm glad you made space to be here today. Okay. So the sister check-ins, we've done about 60 over the last 3 years, and they're usually private, meaning you have a Zoom link, you log in, you talk about it through Zoom with me and some other sisters across the country. We share some pretty in-depth stuff and some pretty heavy stuff, and we share our names, so we don't share it publicly. But this particular topic was very important for us to bring to the forefront, because I want us to become more comfortable talking about suicidal ideations so that we can prevent suicide in our sisters. And so because of that, I brought some friends along, and I'm going to invite them into the room now to join us. And then I'll tell you who they are as I bring them on. So first up, I'm going to bring in Dr. Karinn. So Dr. Karinn, I'm only going to read these papers like one time, okay? We want this very much conversational. I want you to feel comfortable sharing and talking in this space. So Dr. Karinn is an assistant professor of psychiatry at Albert Einstein College of Medicine. She teaches psychopharmacology and aspects of psychotherapy. She is also an attending psychiatrist in the adult outpatient psychiatry division of Montefiore Health Systems. She also uses mindfulness in her practice. But more than anything, she's a sister. She shows up as a Black woman, and she's going to talk to you today. And before I have her speak, I'm going to bring in Keris as well. And I'll read Keris's bio so you can get to know Keris. So here comes Keris. And there she is. So Keris Myrick is a vice president of partnerships at Inseparable. And Inseparable's focus is on making sure that the health system, health policy reflects that the mind is also a part of the body, and it cannot be separated from the body. So they focus on, it's called Inseparable. She's also a podcast host for the Unapologetically Black Unicorn, aka UBU podcast. And she serves as on the board of the Mental Health America, of MHA, Mental Health America, and she's a National Association of Peer Specialists. She is also a certified personal medicine coach. So Keris is here because Keris has a unique lived experience in this space, and she's also a peer specialist and mental health professional. So you got three sisters, three different perspectives. I consider myself, for the purposes of this conversation, a community organizer, a person who cares about the safety of Black women, but more than anything, a homegirl, the girl who gets phone calls in the middle of the night when someone's having a severe panic attack, the girl you text because she knows where the mental health resources are in your community. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm hosting this conversation. Dr. Karinn's here because of her psychiatry background. She's also a sister, And Keris is here because of her lived experience and peer specialist. And she's also a sister. So you got 3 sisters from 3 different perspectives going to have a conversation with you today. So I'm going to give Dr. Karinn and Keris a couple minutes to introduce themselves. You've heard their bios, but I'll let them speak in their own words to let you know who they are.
Keris, do you want to start? Okay, I'll start. So I'm Karinn Glover. I'm a psychiatrist here in New York, where it's very, very warm, and I'm trying not to turn my home into an ice box. So I set my thermostat, and I was like, you know what? Let me just look like summer. So that's what I'm giving right now. And it was also wash day, so my hair is in twists underneath this. And when it dries, I'll take it out. But until then, it'll be under here. I am so happy to be here to talk about something that's super important and crucial. And I think the one thing I want to say before we go further is that Tansy, for all of the work you do, I just want to thank you and thank all the folks who have been supporting you and joining in any and all of these difficult conversations, because this movement requires some difficult conversations and also requires the self-care that we don't often embrace and celebrate. So thank you for that. Keris?
Thank you. And I don't like going first, clearly. And I'm also having email that's binging, and next door somebody has decided that hanging pictures would be a good time to do that right now. So if you hear a little background noise, I apologize. But I am Keris Myrick. I go by Keris, she, they pronouns. I have long black hair. I'm wearing, I guess, kind of sort of red lipstick and white framed glasses that also have some black on them, and a black shirt. I do that just for accessibility reasons. So if people don't have a visual on or don't have ability to see me, I can tell you what I look like. And, this topic is important to me, not just because of the work that I do, but because of the life that I have lived and continue to live, as I have struggled with my own suicide ideation, suicide attempts, and support other people as they're going through this process too, especially people of color, Black women, where we don't see a lot of us around to help us out when we need to talk about these things. So that's critically important to me to be able to have this conversation. So thanks for inviting me, Tansy and Karinn, to be a part of the conversation.
Forgive me, my mouse decided to do what it wanted to do. Thank you both for being here. So we're going to dive right in. And before we get started, I want to call out just 2 quick resources I put in the chat for you all, that we have a plethora of resources for you that are available during this talk. But I want you to be able to focus on what we're saying in the conversation so that you're not taking notes. So post-event, after we finish this conversation in about 50 minutes or so, you'll get an email. For those that have registered, you'll get an email saying, with a list of all the resources we mentioned. And I have my ops lead is going to drop some links in the chat, but I prefer that you just focus on listening. And so one I want to call out before we even get started, in case you have to hop off and go to a meeting or something, is 988. So 988 used to be the long 10-digit number for the Suicide Prevention Lifeline. It is now down to 3 digits, 988. If you have not heard about 988 before, please go to 988lifeline.org and find out about it. Share it with at least 5 of your sisters, because that lifeline is there to prevent suicide and to reduce suicidal ideations. So this conversation, again, is going to happen in 2 parts. We're going to start off with mental health, just general mental health of Black women, because research has found that usually when someone attempts suicide or is having suicide ideations, that it came from something else. It wasn't just one tragic event, the loss of a loved one or loss of a job. It was that, in addition to dealing with depression, dealing with anxiety, dealing with something else, feelings of unworthiness, dealing with something else that led to, then the tragic event kind of amplified it. So one of my first questions to my esteemed guests and my sisters, does depression show up differently in Black women? And if so, how so?
So I'll start with that. I've been getting that question a lot lately, and I'm glad anytime we're talking about our feelings, our lived experiences, our wellness, because typically we are taught to put so much of that aside to just take care of our families, take care of people in our community. So I think one thing that's important to consider is that for Black women, we may not use the same language that the mental health community uses to describe what for lots of people is always the same experience. And so, what do I mean by that? I mean that depression, essentially we diagnose based on 9 symptoms, among them sleep, appetite, feelings of worthlessness, feelings of failure, maybe having low mood and having poor memory and concentration, thinking about hurting yourself, for example. So we ask those questions, but I know that sometimes Black people are never taught to admit that they feel down and hopeless. It may simply come out as like a certain irritability or a certain, I'm too blessed to be stressed. So almost like a level of denial about maybe the tiny little hopelessness thoughts that are going through our minds. So have I learned to ask different questions of Black women? Slightly. I do. In some ways, I ask about social withdrawal. So if this person is usually social, usually motivated to do things, and they are shutting down, and they're simultaneously shutting down not to rest and take a nap and get back at the things that they want to do. But if they are shutting down and they get no pleasure from life and nothing is good for them, no food tastes good, no television shows are enjoyable, comedians don't make them laugh anymore, I try to figure out just sort of what is this person's day-to-day life like. And I do think the mental health profession is wrapping its mind continuously around what any mental health situation or condition looks like in different cultures, and keeping an open mind for what the bottom line is, which is, do you want to be on this planet anymore?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more, and I'm glad you're asking the questions in the way that you're asking them, because a lot of times, if people are going through the assessment questions, they really don't resonate with how, at least in my experience or experience of my Black peers, how we actually would articulate it. So, we're answering no to questions where we probably should be answering yes, because we articulate it or feel it a little bit differently. And I know, back in the day, and I won't say which day, but a lot of times, questions about appetite didn't really make sense to me, when it was really more about what you're saying, like, how does the food taste? Not, or do you taste the food? Not, are you eating food or are you not eating food? That really wasn't, it was an issue. Usually at one point I was not eating, and then, now I overeat, but at the end of the day, the food doesn't have any taste to it. But nobody asked me about that, which is really the question they should be asking. So I think these are really, really good points.
So how do we, so we know that our language might be different as Black women. And then most of us, we're seeing the questions, or we're hearing the questions, we're answering what the question says, not really how we feel. But then we're also still pressing through. We're still showing up at work. We're still running the vacation Bible study. We still got the keys to the church. We're still taking care of these after school events. So we're high functioning. So we're functioning like things are okay, but behind the scenes, they're not. So how can we, well, first, I guess for Dr. Karinn, like what does it mean to be high functioning depressive, or high functioning depression, or have high functioning depression? And then what are some ways we can kind of pull ourselves out of those dark spaces, or just be okay with asking for help? Because we have on this trope or this stereotype as the strong Black woman. And our strength, they say Black don't crack, but I'm starting to notice with the conversations that we're having that we're starting to crack on the inside. Our face looks wonderful. Edges are wonderful. Inside, not so much. So what is high functioning depression? And then how can we as Black women be okay with saying, no, I'm not okay. I can't take on that extra event right now. I can't do this right now. I need to take care of me.
Mm-hmm. So I think the first thing to take into account is there are plenty of people who are functioning quite well in certain domains or certain areas of their life. And we all think that must mean they are okay. So they are able to put on a smile. They are able to show up for the events and bring flowers to the person who's being celebrated. They're capable of giving the toast and the speech and then coming home and perhaps not feeling so great. And for that, I think the idea of high functioning depression is not something that's like in the DSM, in the book that we use to diagnose officially disorders, but it is a popular a conversation around depression, I think, in our circles of community. So the first thing I think to myself whenever I talk to somebody, right, who's a CEO or a medical director or any kind of leader who's in front of people, I recognize, okay, you are able to push through at work, but is it a struggle now? And you're able to hang out with family, but are you pushing yourself a lot? And what is that like for you? And then what are the next 2 days after you push yourself? What are those like? Because even though the person is checking lots of boxes, I still am curious about sort of over the course of a week, how taxing is any of this for you? Or is it nourishing? Or are you able to feel nourished? Are you able to nourish yourself? So that's, I think, part of any discussion around depression for high functioning people or for low functioning people, medium functioning people, is just sort of how much effort do you have to put in? How difficult is any of this? And then from there, before we get to like, how can we sort of disrupt this this path we're on of like, I'm just going to go and take my feelings into account later or take my mental and physical health into account later. It's more about, for me as a clinician, how can I teach you that what you are feeling, whatever you're feeling, is real? I think that is one of the hardest things to get people to learn is just basic check-ins with your body. I mean, women typically, we don't even pee, right? Like we just keep going and going from meeting to meeting and task to task, and then realize like 6 hours have gone by. We've had to pee for the past 3 hours. And we ignored that very basic human necessary function, right? So I start from just super basic. And being able to say, when you have a feeling, are you able to recognize it? Are you able, and what do you do with it? And where does that leave you from how your body is doing to how your mind is doing? And because we also know that depression and any mental health issue is a mind-body issue. I'll pause there.
I think that's a good spot for Keris to hop in.
Yeah, I was going to go preach, keep talking. That's amazing. I couldn't agree more. And I think there is something, especially, as someone who's in a high level position, has been CEO of a peer run organization, the fear of people seeing me weak. The fear of how people will see and perceive my ability to do the job, and worry that they'll think, well, see, she couldn't do it for 2 reasons. 1, she's Black. 2, she's a woman. And 3, she's a person with lived experience of a mental health condition. All of these things are running around in my head that would spur me to continue to do the work versus be like anybody else who might have an off day or a bad day or need to take a break, taking the break that I needed to take, and or finding a safe community to have those conversations, which I didn't, for a long time have that community. I felt if I shared it with someone that indeed they would tell someone else, and that it just wasn't, I didn't have this safe space. And I'll never forget a psychiatrist who's a friend, not my treating psychiatrist, but a psychiatrist who's a friend, who finally had to say to me, and I just love this, you're not everybody's magical Negro. And I was like, wait, what? It was like, oh my gosh, that really struck home with me that I do not have to be people's magical Negro. I do not have to solve their problems. I'm not the mammy figure. I'm none of that stuff. That, I had to kind of, find that other group of people who could help me take care of myself when I needed to take care of myself and not overdo. And I am now kind of learning how, and I'm not now learning how to say no. I've learned how to say no, which I think is another important piece when we think about, that continuing and continuing to do the work, even though we should be saying no. And so, so how have I learned how to say no? Because I don't want to leave people hanging, because I think that's horrible. I've learned how to say no, but I'm not going to share it with you. But so one of the ways I actually say no is I've learned this from campaigns that have been very ineffective in telling people, for example, say no to drugs. It was a very ineffective campaign. Why? Because they didn't tell people what to say yes to. So what I've learned from that is that when I give somebody a no, I try to figure out what is it they want and how can I give them an alternative yes. So that I'm not kind of saying, no, I can't do that. Good luck to you. It's more of, wow, no, I don't have the bandwidth, or I can't fit that in my schedule. But you know what? I know somebody else who might be able to do it. Or have you looked at this to be able, so that I'm giving them something else, the yes, when I give them the no. And lastly, I think having these kind of conversations is another way to help people think about, how can they get out of these dark spaces? Like, we're having these conversations open. They're not in the privacy of some, closed door meeting. Hopefully, this is another way that can help people, is to be open and share our stories and have these kind of conversations so that people can hear this is not uncommon at all.
Yeah, that's one reason it was very important for me for this particular check-in to be very public. So it's streaming on, of course, YouTube and Facebook and LinkedIn. And then we're going to keep running it on YouTube for quite a bit. And we're going to pull snippets from it, because I want us as Black women specifically to become very comfortable in sharing how we feel, very comfortable in saying no. Like one of the sisters said, no is a complete sentence. It is, because your no to this is a yes to yourself, or a yes to something else that you freed yourself up for. So very public with this conversation. I'm hoping that as you all are in the conversation, that you share it with your friends so they can see it. So they can see that it's okay to not be a magical Negro. I'm here to save. We're here to save ourselves. Like one of the Girl Trek founders would say, like, you don't have to ask for permission to save your own life. Like, we are here to save our own lives.
Yeah.
And so on that, how do we, so I guess with saying no, we're kind of combating the strong Black woman stereotype. What are some other ways, I guess, we can say, yes to ourselves and yes to what's a priority for us right now? Other ways to say yes.
I'll start, and I think I have a lot to learn from Keris on this, so I'm looking forward to her, some more of her techniques. I think as somebody who grew up in a family and a community where women have been, I think, instrumental in almost serving as a buffer for our family and community members against the violence of our society. And so what do I mean by that? That I was raised in a family that I went to protest. So I was protesting apartheid when I was a kid. I went to protest against police violence. And when things like that happened in our community, I was surrounded by role models, women who spoke out, who went to community forums, who wrote the letters, who reached out to the Congress people. And so in my mind, were it not for Black women, I don't know where our community would be, right? And so in my mind, I have woken up every day thinking, how can I serve my community and protect my community from the harms that will come our way? Because it seems to me like the harms won't stop, and that they are inevitable. I had to learn through therapy that it is okay to step away from some of that, because usually somebody else it's somebody else's turn to come and do that. And I have to make space for other people to step up. And also that this work is long and the work will always be there. And so if I take a nap, if I take a bath, if I take a moment to twist my hair, go grocery shopping, have nutritious foods in my home, prepare those nutritious foods, make time for laughter and spontaneous joy. If I do those things, that is just as valuable as me writing the letter to the congressperson and making the phone calls. And if anything, those things will help sustain the work. And I appreciate Keris's recommendation that when I say no, I can also say I can't make that event, but I'm happy to post about it on my social media. I cannot do that talk for free, or I cannot do the appearance for this or that, because that's actually going to cost me energy that I would rather devote to myself and the things that I love, or the people I love, or just me. Word is bond. I love myself. So knowing that and being able to trust that things will actually probably be okay has been a major lesson in my adult life. Keris, take it away.
Wow. This is one of the things, honestly, I still struggle with. So again, this is the time not for me to like be this perfect person. I am not this perfect person. There's still a lot of things I struggle with. For point of disclosure, I was brought up all over the world. I'm a global nomad or army brat, if that's a term people prefer. I don't actually like that term. It doesn't feel very bratty. I think the experience, helped me in many ways, gave me lots of different instructional lessons I can use in my life. But it also had me many times as the only Black kid, me and my brother and myself, in our schools or in our programs or things like that. So, I grew up, quite frankly, with very little self-esteem. No matter what my parents were doing, we had the Black History Mystery Game, we had Golden Legacy magazines, like we had all of these things to help us recognize that we have this rich culture from which we're coming, but even so, the day-to-day sort of microaggressions, macroaggressions really did impact me, and my belief in who I was as a person, and my abilities, and also as a young girl and as a growing woman, understanding to love my own self and my own body image and things like that, because it didn't look like the little white girls I was growing up with. They kept telling me, "Oh, you're a big girl." No, I was just a Black girl. I was a Black girl with a booty and some boobs. I mean, that's all there was to it, right? Right. But we were developing differently, and that's all there is to it. And so, one of the things that I've learned is different isn't bad. And I tell people different isn't bad. Different is good. Different is just different. But the way that it was kind of, for me growing up, different was equated with bad. And so I felt I was bad. And that's taken a lot. That's a lifetime of unlearning, sadly. But I think I'm getting much, much better at it. And I think, what I'm starting to give myself like yeses to is, that taking care of oneself, like what did Audre, was it Audre Lorde? Yeah, it was Audre Lorde, who said caring for oneself isn't self-indulgent. And I think caring for oneself, we think about, going to a spa and getting our nails done, and yeah, which, okay, fine, that may be it, that's fine. But actually for us, it's an act of political warfare. And I grew up, during a time of protest, but we were not in the United States, so we weren't involved in that protest in the same way. So my way of protest actually looks a little bit different too. And I think I'll just add that that's an extra burden, which you heard me talk about a little bit before, about recognizing when I show up in a room as a big Black woman, I'm not tiny, as a big Black woman with a rather deepish voice, I guess. And if I'm screaming and yelling, I'm the angry Black B word. That's who I am. And then nobody can hear me and I can't participate. So I've actually had to shift how I show up. And again, that takes an emotional toll and burden. And when I recognize that takes an emotional toll and burden, I know when I'm doing my work and that I have to show up in a particular way in order to be heard, be a Shirley Chisholm and bring my chair to the table, bring the people to my table. I don't care how it gets done. I know that maybe the next day I need to take the day off, because of that emotional labor It's emotional. Ain't nobody's paying me for that labor. The only person who's going to get like hurt or paid is my body paying the price, my mind paying the price of doing that labor. So that's why, those are some of the things I've learned to be able to recognize when I need to step back. And my father said, hey, by the way, if you weren't there tomorrow to give the testimony, who's going to give it? Meaning somebody else is going to do it. It's going to be okay. You don't have to be Superwoman. You don't have to do it all. That if you got hit by a truck tomorrow, God forbid, somebody else will carry it forth. So step back, relax, and also create and support new leaders. That's the other thing I want to add to that.
I love that. I want to touch on a couple things that you shared about, being the angry Black bee. And it was very important for me. And then what Dr. Karinn shared about being at the protest, carrying the weight of society on our shoulders. And it was very important for me and our organization that we had the word mad in the title. So we go out madly motivated. So we kind of hid it a little bit, but we are mad about injustice. We are upset that people are being killed in the streets. We are upset about inequity. So we are mad, but we're passionately motivated to do something about it that's effective. And it's not just one of us. Like we talk about making room for new leaders, making room for sharing space so other people can step up. This is a marathon. We're only going to get there if we get there together. And some of us step back, others step up. I have whole days when I am out of office where I just need to sit in silence. Because even with this event today, to be completely honest, looking through all these resources, it was heavy because I'm living in this. I'm having, friends who are going through this. And then just reading all the articles, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not the only one going through this. I got to hurry up and get this program out so that my sisters know that they're not the only ones. But then I had to take yesterday and just sit. Because I knew that this was going to take energy. I'm an introvert, so it takes energy for me to talk out loud. And then after this, I'm going to have to sit for another hour or two, just sit with what we talked about, draw a couple notes, pull some other stuff out. But one thing I want to touch on before we're getting ready to switch over to suicide ideations. We talk about, depression and our mental health concerns. But one thing that I wanted to make sure we called out is how do we know the difference between exhaustion and depression? Because a lot of us are very tired. We're tired of seeing repeat violence in our own personal lives, the vicarious trauma that we watch on these different clips. And we just want to sometimes just lay down and just disconnect. But how do we know if it's just I'm tired or, oh no, sis, you're actually depressed. It's time to talk to a professional. How do we tell the difference?
I'm going to let Karinn answer that question because I may have an answer, but I really am interested in what the psychiatrist has to say first.
All right. Well, thank you. I often am in the position of helping people figure out whether what they're dealing with is depression like sort of a clinical diagnosis, or is it a sort of a time limited situation? And so we operate with 9 diagnostic criteria, essentially. So the same way we know that if you have a runny nose and sneezing and coughing and fatigue and you want to sleep a lot and you have a fever, that you might have the flu. We also use criteria like that are what we call pathognomonic, or that are just bright light indicators that there is depression. And so if for more than 2 weeks, somebody has been feeling hopeless, worthless, having too much sleep or not enough sleep, eating too much or not enough, and they have a low mood and they're thinking of hurting themselves and it's hard for them to focus, and they get no joy or pleasure out of life. If all of those things are in the building with us, then that's when we really start to think this is likely depression. Of course, they might also have fibroids and be anemic, right? Because if they're still menstruating, right? And so it is the job of the clinician to listen for all of the sort of general health reasons somebody could be tired. That's why psychiatrists go to med school, because there are sometimes medical conditions that can have similar symptoms as a mental health disorder. And there are also medical conditions that can make a mental disorder feel even worse, right? So for some of my patients who have a thyroid condition and depression, right, we really have to work together to sort of target, well, are you feeling exhausted because you need to increase your thyroid medication, or you maybe were skipping it because you were being active and you were traveling or whatever. And then also, do we need to think about an antidepressant, right? Or do we need to just think about some dietary changes that can give your body what it needs, and a sleep aid to help out with the insomnia, right? So there's all these different combinations and permutations that are part of the approach of a psychiatrist whenever it comes to medical and mental health conditions. And like you said, Tansy, I just want to normalize for people that for Black women who are witnessing the kinds of things we are witnessing in our society, and then also having interpersonal microaggressions at work, micro invalidations. You get to work and your hair is blown out and suddenly your natural hair is straight. And so for some reason, people in leadership may say something like, "We like it so much better when your hair is straight. You look beautiful." And you go, wait a minute, does this mean for the past year, y'all were talking behind my back and you now want me to wear my hair straight so I can look like you? And so you don't like the way hair grows out of my head, even though I'm a full human being, right? And say you work in a place where when you speak up, somebody speaks over you in a meeting. If you face that kind of discrimination or bias in multiple areas of your life, the likelihood is when you see a Black person, unarmed Black person killed on your phone, right? The toll that it takes on your body is depressive symptoms. It may not be a full-blown depressive episode. You may not need medication, but you sure as heck have every right to feel down for days at a time, up to 3 months, as research shows. And so how does that figure into how you greet the many other challenges of being an adult in the United States? These are all things that we talk about and sort of use to figure out the best way to move forward, either through diagnosing depression or some other thing.
Yeah, and thank you for talking about the intersection with other health conditions and the role that our other health practitioners should be playing, because we know their biases in primary care and other health conditions. So, how are we ensuring that what happens, like for myself, I had thyroid and parathyroid cancer. I was very lucky to have a endocrinologist, who's a white woman, endocrinologist, who amongst the questions, she asked me, how was my mood? How's my mood doing? And then, I told her, well, sometimes it's kind of hard to get up in the morning. I call my dad and he kind of energizes me and helps me, like, did you take a shower? Do you want to get dressed? You're going to go to work? What time are you going to go? Like, he'll walk me through, like he would walk me through just to get me up and going. Once I was up and going, it was like kind of like starting a battery. I was able to kind of keep going. And she said, oh, okay, well, what about suicide? Have you ever had any suicidal thoughts? And I thought, hey, wait a minute, how'd you go there? How did you get there? But I asked her, actually, I thanked her for asking me. I was not suicidal, but I thanked her for asking me these questions and said, how did you know to ask me these questions? And she said that they're trained that when they see particular levels in your thyroid hormone, your C levels in particular, your not calcium, but your vitamin C levels, when they are low, that they know that they should be asking these questions. So I thought that was really fascinating. And then she handed me a book about the thyroid, and there were these 3 Black women on it, intergenerational. And I thought, oh, wow, y'all have books for every ethnicity? She goes, no, this is just the thyroid book. Everybody gets it. And that was really fascinating to me, that whether you're white, Asian, Latino, Latina, Black, everybody gets the book with the 3 Black women on it. And the next book was like white women. But anyway, the parathyroid book. But we don't see that in mental health. And it really kind of struck me that mental health is considered specialty care. And, thyroid and endocrinology is specialty care, but look how different they were, like completely different. Yeah.
Well, one thing I want to know that I'm going to have to add that book to our resource list because I want to see it myself. That's one thing I want to call out. And I also want to call out the fact that you, Dr. Karinn, mentioned how, I think maybe both of you mentioned how medicine can impact your health, whether if you're treating one thing and then you have suicidal ideations or other things pop up. So I wanted to make sure that the ladies here, like if you're noticing something different in your thoughts and you know you've shifted a medication, you adjusted some type of way, please take it to your doctor because it can impact your mental health. The medicines that you're prescribed, they need to know how it impacts with your body. And then to talk to Keris about asking the right questions, or your doctor asks the right questions. So for us as sisters, as part of a sister circle, it's important for us to ask the right questions too. So one of the questions for us addressing suicide ideations, like, how can I help a friend who is having suicidal thoughts? And to be very transparent, to be very upfront with you all, the last 3 to 4 months, I have had more than one conversation with friends who are having these thoughts. Either the friend themselves are having them. These are all high functioning Black women. You look at them online like they have it all together, or their close family member or friend was. And we have to become a lot more comfortable, like I said before, comfortable asking our friends up front, are you thinking about harming yourself? And listening for the response. And when they say that, they may say, well, no, I'm just tired. I just don't want to be here. These are all in the same vein. And these are actual conversations. I have a friend who is pregnant and expecting, but they adjusted her medications. She was treating something else. They adjusted her medications. She has a young daughter, and she was having these thoughts. And it ended up being tied to that change in medication. But we have to ask the question directly, like, what's going on? How are you feeling? Don't tell me how you really feel. Don't tell me it's fine. I'm fine. I'm okay. Because sometimes Black women, we do oh, I'm all right. I'm good. I'm straight. No, for real. Like, how are you feeling? So sometimes I steer away from the word doing and say feeling to ask people what they're actually feeling. And I want us as Black women to be comfortable asking people how they're feeling and then listening to that response and providing resources thereafter. So these are conversations I've had in the last few months. It's very timely. This conversation is very timely. I need to bring it to the forefront because of these conversations that I'm having. And I know some of you are having these conversations too. Either you yourself are sharing it with friends, or friends are coming to you because you're the friend who knows everybody. You're the connect. You're the plug. You know who to call. Like, we got to use that connection. Like, there are groups, military groups specifically that are studying Black women now to reduce suicide in the military population because they're really struggling over there. So they're studying how we create sister circles or tribes around one another to reduce suicide. And so for us, I'm noticing, like I'm telling y'all, the last 18 months, I don't know what's going on with us. I don't know if it's the weight of, coming out, easing out of the pandemic, the uprisings and feeling like people don't care about Black people anymore. I don't know what's shifting, but something is shifting. And I don't think the data will catch up with us until 2025 when they start to look at 2022 and 2023 numbers. So I want us to get in front of it right now. Go ahead, Dr. Karinn. You about to say something? I saw your hand go up.
Please finish what you were going to say because you were about to offer some pearls.
Yeah, I want us to make sure, one, that we're comfortable asking our friends very tough conversations and that we're prepared for whatever that response is to get them the help they need as quickly as possible. Whether it's through 988, which is still it's only been around a year, it's a new system, but they're trained to de-escalate, to provide resources for suicide ideations, or through, we have the Black Line. All these resources I'm giving you are available. They'll be in your post conversation packet. The Black Line, several mental health resources, Health in Her Hue, Black women, therapy for Black girls, therapy for Black men. Meg released one on her site. We have a resource guide. Our resource guide for 1 and 4 is for those who are like, we need someone to come to you as a mental health resource. So our goal to end police violence, a portion of that are those having mental health emergencies where people are getting gunned down. And if I can remove that portion and decriminalize mental illness, we can save a lot of lives. So on our guide, you'll see it in your post document. It gives you resources to contact in your backyard that can come to you or to your friend to help de-escalate whatever that mental health emergency is. So I know I said a mouthful. I was trying to make sure I touched on quite a bit, but I want to go just go to like what we should and shouldn't say when it comes to suicide ideations. And I want to start with Keris, since she has that very unique lived experience, just kind of share with us what was helpful, what was not helpful. And you'll have in your packet as well, like language matters. We're shifting language. Like we don't say commit suicide anymore. Like it's frowned upon. We don't do that. A person died by suicide. I want you to retool your thinking. They died by suicide, and putting suicide ideations as a mental health concern, not something something's wrong with somebody, or they did this, or they. We are technically we all are doing this because we don't have equitable mental health resources. But I'll save that conversation for another day. But I want Keris to share like what we should and should not say for our friends having these thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, of course, experiences can be unique from woman to woman, of course. And one of the things that, I think about that happens a lot in the Black community as a whole is we don't air our dirty laundry. So being able to, first of all, it's not dirty. And secondly, it's not laundry, it's our feelings. So how do we talk about our feelings and be okay and non-judgmental about what you're hearing when somebody is sharing their feelings, especially when they're big feelings or tough feelings. I think, acknowledging the pain, because a person is feeling some kind of pain that doesn't have a physical sometimes manifestation. Like, if you break your arm, or well, I've never broken my arm, never broken a bone, but if you broke a bone or you cut yourself, you actually can see you can see it and you can feel it. Emotional pain is like, where is it? Where is it? Which is really hard to articulate. So making sure that you're fully present for the person. I know that's been super helpful for me, that whoever I'm talking to needs to be fully present for me and not multitasking, or I double check, do you have enough time? That sort of stuff. The other thing is, and I'll never forget, often I was told by well-meaning people, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I had no boots, I had no straps. Like it wasn't going to happen. And if I did have boots and I did have straps, I didn't have any energy to pull them up anyway. So being able to ask the person, how can I help? How can I be helpful to you right now? And it just may be you're the listening ear. You don't have to solve the problem. It's that listening ear, because they may not have any place else to go to talk through what they're going through. And I think that was the biggest one for me. One of the things my mother did when she was alive, now my father has to do it. Well, he hasn't had to do it for a long time, but she actually used to, because I would lose hope, as I think we've talked about. I would just totally lose hope. There'd be no reason for living. I didn't get it. Why was I put on this earth? Yada, yada. And my mom would not try to solve the problem. She would just go into telling me my birth story. And she would tell me how I was born. And I just thought, I don't remember that. Well, of course I don't remember it. I wasn't there. But my mom would talk about how she prayed me into this world, that she really wanted a little girl. She had my brother, that's my older brother, and she really wanted a little girl. And she just prayed about it and wanted this little girl. And here I was. I came out with this head full of hair. All the nurses in Germany were like, what is this? We've never seen a baby with so much hair. So she would just tell me the whole story, where my brother was, where my father was. And she said, you were put here for a reason, and we'll find out what that reason is together. We'll support you. We'll give you whatever you need. We're surrounding you. And it was never any judgment, and it wasn't even thinking about, well, let's get you a psychiatrist. It wasn't that. It was more of she knew I was experiencing some kind of pain and needed to have meaning and purpose in that moment. And she gave it to me by telling me my birth story. So I found that super powerful. And I'm lucky that I was able to hear that story. She gave me my baby booties, my baby spoons. And actually, I keep them here in my house. And sometimes when I'm feeling down, I look at them. I don't need her to tell the story. I can hear her voice telling me. I can hear my dad. I can look at those artifacts of my babyhood and know that those shoes were meant for walking, and I'm supposed to do something in them, even though they're like my little baby shoes now. And how can I hang on to that next minute? And I had a provider who told me, I will hold the hope for you. I don't know why that worked. I seriously, to this day, do not know why that worked, but something about it said, I have to hold on, because they're holding on. They're holding on to that string I can't hold on to right now. And that was also super helpful. But having that network of people who also have been there, who have gone through these experiences, that's why peer support is so important. It's not a foreign concept to a peer who has gone through this. They totally get it. Having things like peer respites, there are peer respites around the country, not enough. There are 39 around the country. But being able, if you're afraid, for example, I'm afraid to go into a mental health hospital. Maybe you don't even need a mental health hospital, but you need a respite. What about a peer respite? What about a little hotel stay? So I think, those are some of the things that I do, and also some of the things that I think about. I don't like being told actually, like, I don't think it's time for somebody to solve my problem. Like when I'm feeling suicidal, like suddenly they're going to be like the problem solver. You can't solve my problem in the moment. That again, it's this is the time. I just need you to be present and to listen and to hold tight. Even if the holding tight is a figurative holding tight versus a literal holding my hand, it may be you're telling me that you're holding me and holding me tight is enough for me to say, okay, I'm not going to fall. I'm not going to fall.
I love that. I will hold on to the hope for you. Like that, it's so beautiful. I'm adding that to my memory to use it. If when needed, I hope I don't need it, but if when it's needed, to let my person I'm sitting with know that I will hold on to the hope for you. I'm here for you. Um, and to just be a listening ear. Sometimes even I go into problem solving modes. I'm taking that as a note, like they don't want me to solve the problem right now, which usually that's the first thing I go to. Okay, I know this person, this person, this person. Okay, I'm gonna get you here as quickly as possible. Maybe you just want me to listen. I know with one friend, we sat together and we gave her something. We mapped out what her next big thing, next thing she was looking forward to was, and like what it would take to get her to that next thing, and that was helpful for her to say, okay, I can wait this out. We can get, day by day, not thinking months in advance, but each day I'm getting a little closer to this thing. Um, I'm so glad you called out, hold on to the hope, and just not necessarily problem solve, but just be there and be fully present. I know in society we have 7 things going on. You might have your email going on. You're also on a conference call. You got everything going on at once, and maybe holding intentional space for listening to your friend, and then taking it from there.
And just
Um,
asking if possible. Sometimes a person isn't able to answer because they've never had this question asked of them. What is it that I can do for you in the moment? How is it that I can be helpful for you in the moment? How is it that I can be helpful for you in the next moment or the next day or what have you? So that, they've called you for a reason. And sometimes it's helpful to know exactly why me, like, why did you call me and how can I be
mhm.
helpful? And again, they may not be able to answer. I know that wasn't asked of me for a long time. So I didn't really have any. I was like, I don't know. I just need somebody to talk to. But the more I thought of it, it's like, no, I actually did call you for a particular reason, and this is how you can be helpful for me in the moment.
That's really good. I know that some of the myths that are floating around regarding suicide ideations have to do with, you shouldn't talk to anybody. Don't bring it up. Don't ask questions directly. And that has since been debunked by research, that you should actually talk to someone very directly about, just like we're talking right now, having very clear conversation, very direct conversation about, what they're thinking, what they're feeling. Are there any other things for either of you that come to mind, especially as a Black community, as Black women, that we may, as a community, see as a true or a fact in suicidal ideation, but has actually been debunked, or is not factual?
I think what comes to mind for me is this notion that Black people do not die by suicide. That's the first thing, right? Is that we often think um, that's for people who are more privileged than us. That's for people who have more to complain about, and who don't have coping skills, right? Like there's this whole notion of like, oh, that's for people who are weak. And when I think at its core, suicide has much less to do with weakness and more to do with having intolerable anxiety, depression, desperation, or despair, and then having enough energy to actually do something to hurt oneself. So my questions are often about, are you anxious, and are you do you feel restless and simultaneously not want to be here? Because if it's that combination that I think actually has been shown to be more associated with suicide attempts. I think the other thing for Black people is this notion that because we tend to have like a spiritual foundation, even if we're not religious, we tend to have been exposed to religion. And some of the ways that we approach our mental health are through the lens of religion and with the language of religion. So there are notions of if I were a more faithful Christian, or if I were more faithful to my spiritual path, I would never have thoughts like this. That must mean I shouldn't be here. I don't deserve God's grace, right? Meanwhile, like if we're going to talk about God, the grace is for all of us, no matter who you are and what your beliefs are about yourself and your life. And then I think on top of that, there is this notion that if you do see a psychiatrist or anybody in mental health, that you have, that's just one step too far, that you have gone from maybe having a low mood to being absolutely crazy, right? And I say crazy with air quotes because that is this like throwaway term that I think really serves to alienate people from the very thing that could help them. And I hate for us to think in terms of binaries. There's so many ways to be in this world and so many moods and feelings to have and states of being. We would never tell somebody if they, as per Keris's example, if they broke a bone and they were in pain, we would never tell them if you had greater faith, you would have no pain. We would say, take a Tylenol and go see an orthopedist so you can get the help you need, right? So I really wish we could all employ, I think, a certain amount of compassion in our language and in a spirit of openness when somebody is willing to engage about their emotional pain, and hopefully let them know that there is help. Now, is it always easy to see somebody? Is it always quick? No. And so I feel like any conversation around access to mental health care has to always keep it a buck and say, it's really hard to navigate sometimes. It's really hard to get connected, and it is probably still worth it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And again, I'm gonna, double down on peer support and the adjunctive role of peers to help folks walk through that system should they actually enter into the quote unquote formal mental health system, or working with a psychiatrist, psychologist, social worker, etc. Sometimes having somebody walk alongside you who has been there and done that can help you understand why it may be taking so long, or other things that you could be working on to support your health and well-being while you're doing the I don't want to say more medicalized approach, but I'll just put it that way for right now. But I found that really helpful, because sometimes I didn't understand, like when I first was seeing a therapist, I had no idea what to expect. I didn't. I mean, there's no book that says, oh, here's what it's like to see a therapist. You don't grow up seeing a therapist in general. So I had no idea what to expect. And I would say the first year and a half were not the most productive. And it also didn't work according to how we talk. So talk therapy was somebody sitting in a couch and me sitting on a chair. Like, that's not how I have deep conversations about personal, meaningful, emotional stuff in my family. We're usually around a kitchen table. So we actually shifted up when I told the therapist, hey, this is like, I don't know what this is, but it's not working. I can't, I'm not telling you anything. I don't know what's going on. We actually shifted to having our therapy over a meal. And then I could open up, or having it playing a board game, because that's also where we talked about deep things in my family, is over board games or over a meal. And so we had to shift that traditional sort of Western paradigm of how services and therapy is offered, and shifted into a more cultural approach. He couldn't come into my kitchen, so we had to create the kitchen, right? And also, you were talking, Karinn, about language. So my diagnosis, so to be clear with people, is schizophrenia. And I didn't talk about voices in the same way other people do. I talked about actually my hair, and I talked about it in relation to what was in the kitchen or not. And they thought I meant physical kitchen, my white providers. And I was talking about the metaphorical hair kitchen, is like when my kitchen was like, it hadn't gone back, as we say, he had no idea what I was talking about. So, explaining that and having a provider who was also open to learning about how I articulated stuff was critically important, even though they weren't African-American, because it's hard to find an African-American psychiatrist, as we know. Like 4% of psychiatrists are African-American.
A couple things that you said, that of course it's, making therapy, having your therapy sessions look like what you need it to look like. That is very, very important. And the access piece, can we even get in with a therapist or a psychiatrist, and the time it takes. So I would, as we have come to a close, I know this is an amazing conversation. We got to watch everyone's time, be respectful of time. But like I shared with you before, we have a ton of resources. More about Inseparable, more about Dr. Karinn, more about 1 in 4, more about these other resources and ways to get, whether it's a peer warm line, peer respite, other groups like group therapy. You can go in. We have so many resources for you. So I very, very much hope that you take a look at the links that will be shared with you for these resources that are across the country. And let us know what else you want to hear about. We're going to do another session quite like this, focused on Black men, because they historically, and based on data, die by suicide more often than Black women. That'll be in August. And then we have one in September focusing on Black youth, which is another number that's heading in the wrong direction. Lastly, 1 in 4 has an event, a bystander training, that's happening on August 29th. It's a public training to teach people how to document when police violence and other acts of violence are happening around you. That will be available on August 29th. We have a lot going on. So we would love to be connected with you and community with you. We don't like the term follow because it's weird for us. So we use the term be in community. So we are 1 in 4 across all platforms. If there's another question that you want answered, please let us know. info@1in4.org. We'll get right back to you within 24 to 36 hours. I want to thank Dr. Karinn, thank Keris for being here, thank Ebony for being behind the scenes, helping me out with everything. Thank you so much to each one of you. And if you found value in this conversation, please share it with your network, with your sister circle. Make sure they know about all the resources that are available, and let us know what happens after they tap into these resources. Because if we're sharing something that's not helpful to Black people, particularly Black women, then we're not going to share it. That simple. So we would love to hear back from you all. And we hope you have a great day. Let us know how we did. Let us know what you want us to talk about next. And in short, we're here for you, girl. That's it. So we will see you all next time.
Thank you.